Hello, welcome back to LIVENODING. In this episode, I will be doing an improvisation using animation nodes and text objects and instancing. So let's just get started. So compositing and animation nodes. I haven't used animation nodes for a while, but it's good exercise to come back to it. So we will be doing instancing with a text object. So I will create a single text object, and let's create right away. I created this object instancer, and I will be selecting our text object. Let's save this as an text instancing. We know that with the text objects we can quickly create some kind of random text. And let's see, the way it works is not very obvious, but you need to have text object output, and we're gonna grab our text, plug this into the text, and the output. Oh, okay, we already see what's happening with the text. So if we have like the word world, for example, we can have text that's made up of all this word world. So let's say this is like a G, C, T, like something that made up a protein, and you can have that being randomized. And you can also extrude and resize it, but we can do that later. So with this text, let's say if you want to kind of randomize a lot of multiple texts, let's try if we have like a random vector. Let's see, we have grid. Okay, we have grid, so we can use this grid to randomize our text. So with animation nodes, it's slightly different approach with spread chalk, but they're kind of similar. Let's say if we want to have a lot of text and we want to place it, first of all, the way I think is to prepare all the nodes, all the ingredients. In this case, we have one node to do the instancing, one node to prepare for the positions, and another node to locate or to place our 3D objects, which is our text. So we have a grid mesh with a lot of vertices, and we simply plug this into the instance. So it's gonna create this get length. It knows the total number of the vertices. So our object is the text object, so we can plug this into this as an input, and the locations we can just use these vertices. So now we have basically 100 text objects being instance, and the text object is this guy. We also want to randomize this text, so let's see how we can go about doing that. So this is, of course, okay, this is the master. We just place it somewhere else. Gonna save it again. If your computer started to make noise and the fan is running, because by default animation nodes is always calculating, you might want to turn it off and just use this 3. It will update when the frame is changed or when we change the property value. Okay, so we have all this bunch of text, and we want to randomize the text, so it's a little bit more interesting. Perhaps we want to also just extrude it, and we're gonna randomize the extrusion as well. But how do we do that? So if we have this, if we just plug this into the text objects, it seems to be Okay, it changed. It's become like a, it works for multiple objects. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. Try random number. Try multiple random number. Plug this. Okay. Maybe in this case, I can plug random number into the size. Let me try. Okay, we need to have random seed. Okay, it will be a little bit confusing if we are doing it that way, but basically the way that I know it's gonna work is to use a loop in animation nodes. And so with Spreadshock, of course, if you have multiple objects and you plug these multiple objects into the nodes, it's you will expect it to accept multiple values. In animation nodes, normally you still need to use loop. So normally the way I create loop is selecting multiple nodes with multiple objects input and output, and then tap W and loop through the objects. So now we are inside the loop and we can do anything with it. In this case, we have a bunch of text objects. Let's see. Supposedly, okay, with animation nodes, when we have object transform output, that's probably a good nodes to place at the very end. So I want to work on this instead. So loop through objects, and then the output is gonna be another object list. So this is a loop, and the output's gonna go there. Okay, so we have a bunch of vertices, and then we have object instance. Those objects will be randomized per text. So random text or string. So for these objects, we're gonna randomize it somehow. Object text output. So the object goes in there, and the output's gonna be the new objects with random text. In order to randomize it, we need to have the index plug into the seed. And let's see if it's actually working or not. Okay, I know why. It's not working because we need to turn on copy full objects. And dip copy. Yeah, dip copy. So yeah, that's a bit of gotcha there. So I wonder if it's actually working before with a text object when we are using the without using the loop. I'm really curious now. So we have the loop still working, but I wonder if we can just use these objects and then this random text with a random number. Let's see. So we have multiple objects plugged. Let's try random number for the extrude as well. Okay, it is actually working. That's interesting. So it is now actually factorized. So we don't need to use the loop actually, but I like using the loop sometimes because it can get a little bit confusing as well to kind of guess which nodes allows multiple values, which one doesn't. So range integer. Integer range. Let's try this. Let's plug into the seed. Okay, seems like in this case the random text doesn't take multiple input and output, unless I'm wrong. But anyhow, it's slightly confusing if you're doing it this way. So let's get back to the loop. Okay, now we have a bunch of instances. We have these lines we want to hide. And back to this guy, we want to randomize the extrude. Use a random number for that. Okay, so now it's a little bit better. We want to also maybe to make each and every text on the same floor, we can kind of offset it with a number. So the number is something that can come from this guy. So this is the red thing is our loop, right? It's generating a bunch of number. Then we can reuse this number. This one, I will create a float list. So we have object list and we have another output here that we just created. Plugged it in. So we can reuse this to offset the location of our objects. So offset vectors. This needs to work for multiple values. Now this is the original values. That's interesting. This should actually work. Let me try random vector. Plug into this guy. See, at some point I managed to make it working. Let me try. There we go. See, I want this node to work for multiple values. And that's the thing with this guy. Doesn't always work. Let me try get back to our setup. Okay, let's see. We have float list. We want to connect to the offset vector. So use a vector in, or actually combine vector. So we have a bunch of vector value in here. Plug into the Z. Plug this into this guy as an offset. I'm expecting this to change. Okay, that's really weird. Okay, that's really weird. That actually changed now. Maybe that's kind of like a small bugs, but kind of annoying. So you can randomize, you can use like random vector to randomize the position, like what you see here, or we can just use our value, and supposedly our value is offsetting our objects. We need to cut it by half. So use math, multiply by half. So no, doesn't seem to work. Let me check what's going on. We are actually almost there. It's just slightly confusing. So you have a bunch of objects, and we randomize the height. So we have this random number being generated, and then we already laid out our text, and we need to offset it by this number. Combine vector. So this is a number, plug into the Z, offset it. And we are not seeing the result. Okay, I have a feeling I need to reset the position. W or reset source data. Maybe I accidentally randomized the text at some point, but you see that it was actually working on the other example. So grid mesh, object instancer, offset, combine vector. So this is actually the exact same setup, just like now. And it's working here, it's not working on the other one. So I wonder why. Maybe it is a bug. Maybe the scale has something to do with it. Scale, make the scale go back to 1. And plug the float in there. Okay, that's the scale. If I scale it to 2, okay, that's why. Cool, I fixed the issue. You can have more objects. Text objects actually can be kind of heavy. Be careful with it. So I kind of like it before where we have like a bunch of randomness as well. That's actually an extra thing that you can do. So random vector, multiple value, and how many we count. It needs to be the same number as the get length. Plug this into this guy, and we have also randomness. Since we already kind of make the bottom flat, we don't want to we don't want randomness at the z, so we need to separate vector, combine it again, getting rid of the z. Okay, so the bottom should be flat. We randomize the x and the y. We can control the randomness, 0 randomness, and some randomness. Okay, that's zero randomness, and now with a little bit of randomness. So yeah, the whole setup now is getting a little bit complicated, but it's actually still quite logical, and it should be simple. Sorry about the glitch, but yeah. So let's summarize this. We start with a single text objects, and this is our original text. And then we instance the text, and we create a deep copy for the text. We have actually 400 text objects now. And for each object, we are using this loop. And inside the loops, we are generating random text, which is this guy over here, ACGT. And then we also randomize the position of the text and arrange the text in the grid. We kind of offset the text so they are sitting on the floor. And that's pretty much it. It's a lot of things going on, but it's really it's really simplified, right? We can still offset our text, do things like that. And this is, I'm using 2.79, and we are transitioning to Blender 2.8. Maybe next year it's gonna be completed. But this guy, what we did over here, we can see on the new Blender 2.8. This is alpha, still Blender alpha. Let's look at our instancing. See, you see how now that this doesn't work, but we still have our text object being randomized. And this is really cool if you use like random and use a matcap. It's looking really nice. And we can always go back to this guy and then change our randomness. Let's say instead of SEGT, you want to randomize the word Blender. So this word Blender randomized. Save it. Let's refer. Where's referred? Okay. There you go. It's being updated. Turn on cavity. Shadow. Okay, that's really cool. Can we also rotate? If we are using Studio, I think we can rotate. On matcap, we can kind of flip the lighting. Anyhow, that's the result basically. So if you have you want to have like random text, you can use animation nodes to use this setup. Maybe what else we can do next? Maybe some kind of world cloud. For that, we need some kind of algorithm that's running inside Blender. But this is still kind of interesting. And currently we have random text, right? But you can also provide your own text. It's not just it doesn't need to be random text like this. You can provide like a list of text, and then you can use that generated text in here inside the loop. So animation nodes is always more about the loop. The loop is really interesting. Sphere chalk loop is not very obvious. Sphere chalk is more like a, what do you call it, procedural, like kind of programming. Animation nodes is more like a real programming. It's got loop and stuff. Loop is really, really powerful, but it's slightly confusing. But if you know the input and the output, and you know what you're generating and processing inside the loop, then it should be fine. You can go to the next process and then continue on. So I think this is a good example, even though it's slightly confusing. So random text with offset. This is animation nodes. Hopefully you find this useful. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.